Good morning, my dear audience. In this short presentation, I will attempt to show you the need to adapt the CFTEAP, which has developed by US Association, to the Japanese university context, and thus create a Japanese version of the CFTEAP. The talk will follow this outline. First, I will give an overview of university education in contemporary Japan with brief historical references. And second, I will discuss the qualifications required of English teachers in Japan. Third, we will observe some examples of the qualifications required, especially in EAP teacher employment in Japan. I will then show you some examples of EAP teaching practice at my university, Tohoku University, and finally, I will discuss some of the meaningful effects that CFTEAP could have on the Japanese university education system, which has a unique, even idiosyncratic character. Then I will go background here. First, I will discuss the modern Japanese school education system and the post-World War II period. In my country, elementary and junior high schools are compulsory under the School Education Act, whereas over senior high schools, including universities, of course, are non-compulsory. However, according to the administrative division of MEXT, our Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, elementary, junior high, and senior high schools are classified as primary and secondary education, while education above universities, including postgraduate studies, is called higher education. What is important here is the fact that while primary and secondary education is subject to the considerably strict regulations of the Ministry of Education, higher education, that is, university, is given a greater deal of autonomy and freedom in setting educational objectives, curriculum development, and teacher recruitment qualifications. This will be discussed in more detail later. This slide shows the transition of the Japanese education system before and after World War II. It should be noted that modern universities cover the latter part of the older senior high schools of 80 years ago, which will be of importance in later discussions. This section considers how qualifications for Japanese primary and secondary teachers differ from those for university teachers. This is a slide shown here. Let's look at its lower right-hand part. Teachers in primary and secondary education. I will enlarge this part. Course of study, teacher training program, teaching license, employment test, authorized textbooks. As I do not have enough time to explain everything in detail, the audience who are interested can take the time to read it later. The course of study is an official guideline for education. Various innovations are made to daily education following this guideline. To become a teacher of primary and secondary education, a teacher's license is required. To obtain this license, students must complete a specialized teacher training program at the university, which includes student-teacher practice. The license holder must then pass the teacher recruitment test administered by the respective prefecture before being allowed to teach in the actual classroom. The textbooks used in the classrooms are called authorized textbooks. The actual teaching takes place using textbooks chosen by each school from a group of textbooks that have been reviewed by the Ministry of Education. These are examples of the subjects that the teacher training programs require for university students to become primary and secondary English teachers. However, they do not include the courses in curriculum design, learning assessment theory, teaching theory, or even statistics. Next, we look at teaching and teaching staff at universities. And as I mentioned earlier, we must remember that the first and second years of modern Japanese universities roughly correspond to the third and fourth years of senior high schools more than 80 years ago. I will expand on the university part here. We will not go into the discussion about whether the first and second years of university are for liberal arts education or general education. However, we can say that at least the first and second years are for basic academic education, including the transition from senior high school, while the third and fourth years are for higher education, specialized in the individual field. It is important to note that while primary and secondary education is subject to fairly strict regulations, there's no clear framework for the qualifications required of teachers who teach at Japanese universities. Now, we'll look at some examples of the qualifications and conditions under which English language teachers at Japanese universities are recruited. This website, called JREC-In, is the official portal page for helping people find teaching or research job at universities in Japan. As the table on the left shows, there are many items related to university language teacher employment. Let us look at a few examples, focusing on the item in red, the qualifications. Here we have some excerpts from the item qualifications for the university English teacher. I won't use any actual university names here, of course. Only the fourth excerpt contains relatively reasonable content, but what I want to emphasize here is not the fact that they are very much poorly written, but the fact that no uniform hiring qualifications are presented here at all. Let us take a look at the structure of modern Japanese university once again here. Although this structure has improved a lot in recent years, even today, there still exists a kind of weird and wrong idea that the third and fourth years of university are the junior university education, whereas the first and second years should be devoted to liberal arts and general education, which is similar to high schools in the old system. Well, for example, when a professor specialized in 19th century English literature, who mainly teaches the third and fourth years and graduate students, is asked and reluctantly teaches first and second year English education classes, that professor sometimes continues to offer the lectures of Dickens novels. The professor, who is specialized in 19th century English literature, has no qualifications or skills in teaching English or teaching EAP. This strange tradition is one of the reasons why there is no clear standard, a framework for the EAP teacher qualifications, especially in the employment process. Let me remind you again here. As we saw earlier, to become a teacher in elementary and secondary education, qualifications were required, including a teacher's license. But universities that are categorized in higher education have, in a sense, no formal qualification criteria whatsoever. So academic degree like PhD and academic achievements like the number of publications tend to be the greatest qualification requirements. Therefore, there are no uniform and clear standards of qualifications when hiring EAP teachers at Japanese universities. In this section, we present examples of EAP education, which we call EGAP in practice at Tohoku University. Tohoku University is one of the largest research-oriented national universities in Japan, and its English language teaching objectives can be clearly defined as EAP. In the first and second years, more general EGAP, that is, English for general academic purposes, is taught. We pay attention to a smooth transition for new students from high school to EGAP education. We use the TOEFL ITP test to assess the results of EGAP education. Then, in the third and the fourth years, field-specific EAP or ESAP, that is English for specific academic purposes, will be taught. The assessment criterion here will be the TOEFL IPT test. We set a TOEFL ITP score of 550 as an attainment target for first and second year students. Tohoku University is using the TOEFL ITP assessment in the first and second years to make the transition from the senior high school easier. We set out a total of 20 core skills of EAP shown in the left hand. And we also created a syllabus template as illustrated on the right side. We created original textbooks and tied them together other textbooks with materials and apps to provide EGAP education. And as the graph on the right shows, The average TOEFL ITP score of our 2,400 first-year students continues to rise each year. And in the new English teacher employment process, we put heavy stress on the applicant's ability for curriculum development. And we value the ability of newly hired faculty to be clearly aware of the place their classes occupy in the overall curriculum. Finally, I will mention which of the items in the framework you have developed are particularly meaningful for EAP education within Japanese university context. We expect Japanese EAP teachers to have their competencies indicated by the items in the upper table. We also believe that the Japanese version of the CFTEAP, which must not be developed and adapted to the Japanese university context, should be used in the way indicated by the items in the lower table. I took the initiative to establish a new organization for university EAP teachers this spring, which is called the EGAP Japan Consortium. The objectives of its establishment are as follows. The development of EGAP skills is essential for Japanese university students to be able to study at the same competitive level as their global peers. To help them acquire EGAP skills, we believe it is necessary to develop and disseminate new curricula and learning materials that utilize the TOEFL test, as well as CFTEAP, of course. As mentioned earlier, in Japan, there is a need for a smoother transition and closer collaboration between senior high schools and universities. It is not difficult to imagine that a reference frame such as CFTEAP would play a crucial role for modern Japanese universities, which do not have clear and standardized recruitment qualifications. Thank you very much for watching. Good day to you all.